Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Hatman Strikes Back Daily Boxing News. We've got some stuff to talk about today. Before we get into it, shout out to everybody in the live chat. We got Ade Oladipo, not to be confused with Ade Oladipo. We got Tom. We got Gordon Dalglish, High Noon, Herc Gate, Askip, Horseman's Information Office. I like his comments. He says, male with the headwear, planning some kind of retaliation. There you go. Hatman Strikes Back. Paul Thompson, JR. Big up, big up. 33 concurrent viewers. And only 8 likes. Can we get the likes up, folks? Thank you in advance. Big up Matt Borgerson. Oh, damn. Matt says Bob can go now. I heard he's in hospice. Shout out to Toby. Well, the thing about old age, obviously Bob Arum's in his 90s, so he's lived a long old life. But cognitive decline can precipitate physical decline, and cognitive decline can be triggered by stagnation in your life. In many cases, when people retire, they can go into decline very quickly because their minds are not being stimulated anymore. They're not as physically active, and the decline can happen very rapidly. Bob Arum is still working, but ever since the ESPN deal came to an end, and even before then, Top Rank's activity was really grinding almost to a halt. We'll get into Bob Arum a little bit later on with regards to this DAZN deal, because it isn't as significant as some people might assume, all right? Shout out to BH. Salute, salute. 51 concurrent viewers. I guess people are hard at work right now. See who can sneak out and get away with putting those earbuds in and listening to the live stream. Watching the live stream. Paul Thompson says, on a side note, check out Chris Webby. Raw Thoughts. Very interesting track. Okay. Raw Thoughts, what is that? 7 Roman numerals. All right, let's get into the news here. Big up JR. Shay says, happy St. Paddy's Day. Got Michael in the place. Manjin Jack, yo, yo, yo. So let's talk about some boxing here. Big up John Boy. Just waiting for the next track to start up. There we go. Bit of reggae. Now, on a previous stream I did, there was several people that turned up in the live chat claiming that the Anthony Joshua Dillian Whyte rematch has been signed. It's done. It's confirmed. When I asked them for a source, they directed me towards Boxing King Media. After the stream, I went over to Boxing King Media's X account and I found this. Sources, Anthony Joshua to return against old rival. Sources suggest Anthony Joshua's comeback fight could be against Dillian Whyte, although nothing has been confirmed at this stage. So these people were basically indirectly accusing Boxing King Media. I'm not accusing them because they basically believed that the fight was signed and confirmed, but they are indirectly, maybe unintentionally, putting Boxing King Media in the ish by making out as though he confirmed and totally guaranteed that the fight is. He did nothing of the sort. Stop putting that on Boxing King Media. He's not pumping out misinformation about this fight. Stop it. I don't know why people do this. It's not hard to confirm whether a fight has been signed or not. It's not hard. I don't know why people love jumping the gun, claiming a fight has been signed when it hasn't. I mean, a bunch of Gareth A. Davis is running around. Gareth A. Davis saying AJ against Partridge has been signed live on air on TalkSport. Adam Cattrall had to pull him up and said, no, are you sure it's been signed or just agreed? Oh, no, it's been agreed, not signed. I don't know why people do this. But at least Gareth A. Davis corrected himself, right? When he was pulled up. Whereas the people last time in the live chat was saying it's been signed. Oh, no, it's definitely signed. It's confirmed now. By who? Boxing King Media. You go over to Boxing King Media and this is what Boxing King Media actually said. Nothing has been confirmed. I don't know if people need spec savers or I don't know what it is, bro. But yeah, AJ Whyte, definitely not signed. Not officially anyway. No, there's no official confirmation that the fight has been signed at all. All right? Let's move on from that. Shout out to everybody in the live chat. How many of you guys have seen this? So this was a post put up by Martin Bacoli on his Instagram page. It was also on Jared Anderson's Instagram page. And as you can see in the comments, the two guys are going at it. I think it's supposed to be Martin Bacoli sat in the middle there on top of all the cash, but I've never seen Martin Bacoli look so svelte. Well, I have, but many, many years ago, like when he fought and lost to Michael Hunter. But is that supposed to be Bacoli in the middle? I don't know. It's obviously Jared Anderson on the side there looking at him, staring him in the face. In the comments, you can see Martin Bacoli says, dude wanted another knockout. And Anderson has replied below. He said, we all know it wasn't easy. You still had to train your hardest. More than happy to do it again, though, champ. So Jared Anderson apparently calling out Martin Bacoli for a rematch. I think Anderson has been traumatized by the Martin Bacoli fight. I think he has PTSD. Because in the fight he had since against this obscure Greek fighter, I mean, how many Greek heavyweights do you know of? Anderson's people managed to find one. And he obviously beat the guy on points, but he looked listless in that performance. Very, very flat, uninterested. And to me, it looked like a guy that was dealing with demons. He was fighting the demons in his mind more than he was fighting the opponent. And like I say, I think the majority of those demons came from that Martin Bacoli fight. I think that's something that's haunting him every night. He's probably cried about it a bunch of times. No shade, no disrespect, but Anderson is a very emotional character. And maybe he feels like he can't move on with his career, can't move on with his life until he faces Martin Bacoli again. What do you guys reckon about that possibility? He told Martin Bacoli in the Instagram exchange, you know, it wasn't easy. Well, Martin Bacoli did beat the living daylights out of him, but he was made to work for the victory. Jared Anderson, as much as we can criticize his technique, his defense, his tactics, his chin, he did show heart. We can't deny that. He showed a lot of heart. He fought back every step of the way. And when the fight was stopped, unlike so many other fighters who pretend like they're disappointed when the fight was stopped, but you can clearly see from their body language, they're relieved. With Anderson, he looked genuinely upset that he got stopped, that the fight was called off. I mean, it had to be called off, right? He was getting an absolute shellacking. But he looked genuinely distressed and upset that the referee stopped the fight. So he went out on his shield. He showed a tremendous amount of heart. Nobody can take that away from him. You know, some people show heart without really trying to win. They just take a beating and don't quit. Anderson was still trying to win right up until the bitter end. So, yeah, he showed a lot of heart. Getting back in there against Bacoli, I mean, Bacoli hasn't looked good since, has he? Stopped in 2 rounds by Joseph Parker. Had a controversial draw with F.A. Jagba, which most people, including myself, thought he should have lost. He's been living high on the hog over there in Congo, ballooning up in weight. Maybe Anderson feels like it's a good time to get him. But only if Anderson has kept himself in the gym, has maintained his stamina, because Anderson's a very athletic fighter. And I've spoke about this before. Up until the Bacoli fight, Anderson, to me, had maintained the energy of youth. You know that energy that you have as a child, where you've just got bundles and bundles of energy and you can just keep going and going and going like the Energizer Bunny. Once you lose that energy by not training, by not being in the gym, by not maintaining that stream of, again, youthful energy, once you lose it, you never get it back. Has Jared Anderson lost it since the Bacoli fight? Or has he kept himself in the gym? Because with that youthful energy, he had tremendous work rate and tremendous stamina. Tremendous. The amount of punches he was throwing was crazy. And he did go the distance in a disappointing performance against Charles Martin, but he certainly didn't gas out. He got wobbled a few times, but he didn't gas out or anything. And he's been the distance against a guy called Riyad Murray, a guy who beat Tony Yoka. So he was able to go the distance for fun with loads and loads left in the tank. It's his defense and his chin and his stubbornness that have let him down so many times. But that stamina was his superpower. That work rate was a superpower. Does he still have it? If, and it is a big if with the inactivity. Again, look at Jared Anderson's box rec here. Yeah, it's been a long time since he was in the ring, over a year. And then prior to that, it was several months before when he fought Martin Bacoli. If he's still got that stamina, if he's still got that work rate, I don't think a revenge victory over Martin Bacoli is completely out of the question if they were to fight, let's say, in the next 6 months. I don't think that's completely out of the question. Because I think Bacoli has deteriorated. So we need to see where Anderson's at. And that moves us very nicely onto the next bit of, I say news, it hasn't been confirmed as far as I can tell. And that is that Jared Anderson has signed a co-promotional deal with Queensberry. There are some news outlets that are reporting this, but I haven't heard anything official or seen anything official from Queensberry, at least not as of right now. Maybe if I did a search as I'm doing this stream, something might pop up. But prior to this stream, I hadn't seen anything confirming from Queensberry, confirming from Anderson on his Instagram, on his socials, that he's done a co-promotional deal with Queensberry. There were people that popped up in a previous stream that said that Anderson was looking to take fights in the UK. Martin Bacoli's based in the UK. So we'll see where that goes. Signing with Queensberry on a co-promotion, still having Top Rank involved, is an interesting move. But it's a move which, when you see the nature of this deal that Top Rank have done with DAZN, kind of makes sense. Anderson, incidentally, despite the very long inactivity, and if you look closely there, on his box rec, it says status. You see next to his face, it's got box pro, right? It says status inactive. That's how long he's been out the ring. Box rec have got him as an inactive fighter, as if he'd retired, right? That's the status they give you if you're retired. It just says inactive. Despite that, Anderson is ranked by one of the 4 major sanctioning bodies in the WBO, who've got him at number 6, inexplicably. Hasn't fought in over a year. He's ranked number 6. Very strange. Right? He's ranked above the likes of Richard Torres, who's been more active. Bakadir Jalalov. Derek Chisora hasn't been active, to be fair. Richard Riakpo, he's been more active. Solomon Dakers, etc., etc. All right? Just below, Jelly Zhang, Anthony Joshua, Daniel Dubois, Philip Pergovich, Moses Itauma. Shout out to everybody in the live chat. We got some super chats coming here. Big up Matt Borgerson. He says, in Jared Anderson's comment section, someone said they had hope in him, and Jared responded with shrug emojis and laughing. He doesn't self-believe. Okay, that's interesting from Matt. He says, watch Anderson's videos. He does everything but take the fighting seriously. It's just him partying and sitting by a ring. One sparring a month. Matt also says, Anderson versus Torres is the fight. I think it's the fight too. But apparently, Torres and the Cuban fighter, Frank Sanchez, excuse me, their fight is going to be rescheduled because Frank Sanchez pulled out of the initial date with apparently knee problems, and we know he's had knee problems for a very long time, years. So it remains to be seen whether that fight goes ahead. If it doesn't go ahead, I'd like to see Anderson Torres. They're both with Top Rank still, apparently. But there has been some talk behind the scenes of Richard Torres potentially signing with Zuffa. We'll see what happens with that. Okay, but if the Anderson-Torres fight were to happen, it would stand a much better chance of happening, should I say, if both guys remain with Top Rank. So, we'll see. Big up Matt Borgerson, as ever, with the super chats. But there you go. Anderson, you can see him under the WBO, ranked at number 6. So let's move on to the main topic of conversation, of discussion for this live stream, and that is Top Rank signing a broadcast deal with DAZN. It says here, in a big boost for US boxing. Ever since the promotion have been in negotiations with several broadcasters over what platform their events, largely on American shores, will land. And after nearly a year out of action on broadcast platforms, Ring Magazine have revealed that they, as in Top Rank, have inked a new deal with DAZN. The deal will see them show 8 to 10 cards a year on the streaming service, with a legendary promotional outfit to be paid license fees of $1 million and $1.25 million for each event. Discussions had been held over a year, with Top Rank kingpin Todd DeBerth spearheading negotiations. Despite being without a TV deal, Top Rank still possesses a strong depth of squared circle talent on their roster. They still have some high-selling superstars on their books, including Teofimo Lopez, Keyshawn Davis, and Bruce Carrington. And they also have an array of world champions, including the likes of Emmanuel Navarrete, Xander Zejas, Janabek Alim Kanuli, and Abdullah Mason. Top Rank have also invested in bright young talent, with heavyweight Richard Torres Jr. close to breaking in to the big time at world level. Jared Anderson is still on the roster, but has been linked with a switch to Queensbury Promotions in recent weeks. Now, the first thing we need to pick up on here is the number of shows and the budget per show. So 8 to 10 cards a year for a major promoter is a very small number of cards. If we go with the low end, 8, you're talking about a card every, 6 to 8 weeks? That's nowhere near as active as Top Rank used to be. And as far as the budget, $1 million to $1.25 million per event, again, that's a small budget compared to what Top Rank are used to when they had the ESPN deal. And by the way, again, in previous streams, there were people absolutely adamant that Top Rank could re-sign with ESPN. Obviously turned out not to be true. So, yeah, Top Rank have now got a broadcast deal, but it's a pretty small budget and it's pretty limited in terms of the number of shows. I don't know whether they can keep the fighters they have with this type of deal, at least all of them, because it's a limited deal. Now, of course, they can do pay-per-view. Just because it's $1 million to $1.5 million for each event doesn't mean they can't generate more revenue by charging a pay-per-view premium. They can, but surely they're only going to get away with that commercially for the right fights, you know? And this is why, like I said earlier on, Jared Anderson signing, and this is unconfirmed, but Jared Anderson signing a co-promotional deal with Queensberry does make sense. Because since it's a co-promotion with Queensberry, now he can just be on Queensberry cards when he needs to be, which have much bigger budgets in some instances. And if he fights Queensberry heavyweights, maybe he'll get much bigger paydays than he could expect fighting on Top Rank cards at this stage. So, an interesting move for Jared Anderson, and a move that kind of makes sense. I mean, Queensberry have got all the heavyweights other than Usyk, and one or two others. So, I reckon it's probably the right move for Anderson. I've been encouraging other heavyweights, like Bacoli, we just spoke about Bacoli, to sign with Zuffa, because these are guys who are probably at the back end of their careers. They don't really have much of a following. And so you might as well just take the steady income and the activity that Zuffa will be able to offer you. Because these guys are never going to be stars. Zhang's never going to be a star, I don't think. Bacoli's never going to be a star. So yeah, sign with Zuffa. Whereas with Jared Anderson, I'm not saying he's going to be a star, but he's still young enough to become a star. If he takes boxing seriously. Matt Borgerson, big up Matt Borgerson, he's saying Anderson doesn't take it seriously. And I can't refute what he's saying, because Anderson out of his own mouth in the past has said boxing is just a job to him. He doesn't intend to box on beyond the age of 27, I think he originally said. But you know, people say silly things when they're young. We all have. They change their minds. Jared Anderson has fairly recently become a father. That can change your whole perspective on life. So, as a boxing fan, I hope Anderson does start taking it seriously. Maybe it's wishful thinking, but I hope he does, because there is talent there. There is ability there. I'm not saying he's ever going to dominate the division or anything, but I think he can be a player if he applies himself in the right way. And one of the biggest weaknesses for Anderson in the past has been this stubbornness, hard-headedness, thinking he knows it all and nobody can tell him anything. He got angry at Tim Bradley. This was prior to losing to Martin Bacoli, when Bradley kept saying on broadcast after broadcast on ESPN that Anderson needs to stop that lean back. Yeah, there have been many fighters in the past and still some fighters today that lean back from punches, but guess what? They get their feet out of the way when they're leaning back. Anderson would stand there like a potted plant, his feet anchored to the canvas, and then lean back from punches. That is a recipe for disaster. Okay? Tim Bradley pointed this out on numerous occasions, and Anderson got upset with him and said, I know what I'm doing. And actually, when I went to his Instagram page, he was going back and forth with somebody in the comments, and that same phrase came out again. I know what I'm doing. Oh dear. Now, in the case of the person he was going back and forth with, in the Instagram comments, it was someone who wasn't a professional boxer. As far as I'm aware, wasn't anyone well known in the boxing industry. And so he was saying, oh, what, I'm supposed to listen to someone that's never laced up a pair of gloves in their lives? I know what I'm doing. Okay, cool. But he said the same thing about Tim Bradley, and Tim Bradley's been there, seen it, done it. Basically told Bradley, you know, I don't need your input. I know what I'm doing. He doesn't know what he's doing. To be fair, In the fight after the Bacoli fight, which again, it wasn't an impressive performance, he did stop doing that lean back for the most part. So clearly, someone has managed to talk some level of sense into him. Yeah? Bacoli managed to beat a little bit of sense into him. But a very stubborn, hard-headed young man needs to get rid of that stubbornness and hard-headedness and actually listen to people that know better than he does. And there are plenty of people in boxing that know better than Jared Anderson. But yeah, with Top Rank, it's a very bare bones kind of deal. 8 to 10 shows a year. $1 million budget per show. It won't necessarily be $1 million spent on every show. Some shows it might be less, other shows it might be more. I'm assuming anyway, that would be, if they divided the budget, the annual budget they've been given, that's what it would be per show. So let me know what you think of Top Rank's deal, folks. We got Matt Borges, and he says, the only reason it's small is because, in a way, Nakatani. Big up Glum Coyote. He says, I'm glad, actually, as I don't have a Netflix subscription and won't consider to feed this capitalist beast. So I'd be very grateful if people don't explode in joy for every boxing Netflix deal. I personally am very happy about all this boxing going on Netflix, because I do have a Netflix subscription. And I find Netflix subscription to be much better value for money than a DAZN subscription. Glum Coyote says, subscribe with Mubi. Never heard of Mubi. I'll look into it. Who are Mubi? Because yeah, the DAZN subscription is no longer good value for money. So I don't subscribe to DAZN anymore. Whereas Netflix, I had Netflix anyway. So for there to be boxing on it, it's a bonus. But shout out to Glum Coyote. He's against Netflix. He says Mubi is the place to sign up. I'm looking at Mubi now. I've done a search here. It says, watch truly great cinema wherever you are. Okay, Mubi's streaming service. Let's have a look. It says it's a British streaming platform, production company, and film distributor. Mubi produces and theatrically distributes films by emerging and established filmmakers. Okay. You're saying it also does sports? I'm sure there are loads of you guys who know what Mubi is, and you know, me being an old man, I'm late to the party. Do they stream sports too? Like major boxing? I mean, how does it work? Okay, Glum Coyote says it's a fine selection of indie movies. Okay, there may be indie movies, but when it comes to sports, what are the options? When it comes to boxing specifically, what are the options? If it's a choice between DAZN, oh, no sports on Mubi. Well, there you go. If it's a choice between DAZN or Netflix, I would much rather get my boxing on Netflix, you know, because there aren't the extremely questionable business practices with Netflix that you get with DAZN, making it so difficult for people to unsubscribe, you know, to cancel their subscriptions. And when you do cancel, you get charged for more than a month after cancellation, etc., etc. It's not straightforward. It's very dubious the way they do things and the way they treat their customers. Whereas on Netflix, it's very easy. You literally go into your settings, cancel your subscription, and you don't get charged for like 2 months or 6 weeks or whatever it is, the way DAZN do it. Glum Coyote says it's a choice between Netflix and Mubi. Or maybe for movies, yeah, but not for sports. Big up Glum Coyote. Indeed, as Leonard says there, I agree, boxing on Netflix was pleasant for me. Big up Toby, he says, Wasn't it the Ring magazine who broke the Top Rank news but withdrew the bit about the budget? Could be Turkey just causing trouble? I'll check that right now. Let's have a look. Let me have a look at Sports Illustrated. That's a well-known US publication. Let's see if they talk about the budgets. They're saying the same thing, but they're quoting the Ring. Okay, but it does say here that, yeah, it's a now deleted post on social media. About the budgets, yeah. So maybe the budgets will be more. We'll see. Thank you for alerting me to that. The fact that they've retracted the bit about the budgets. Interesting. It's also interesting, similar to Frank Warren before him, Bob Arum used to constantly slag off DAZN, didn't he? Constantly slagging off DAZN. Now he's signed with him. That's why you can't take the things that promoters say too seriously. Yes, Toby, you are indeed correct. The bit about the budgets has been retracted. So we'll see. Maybe the budget will be bigger. Shout out to everybody in the live chat. Star Fox says Bob will outlive any criticism, I'm sure. Well, according to Matt Borgerson, he's in a bad way. In hospice. Does Bob Arum still blaze? Does he still bun down Zubies? Anyone remember that? A few years ago, Bob Arum admitted that he likes, he likes the greenery. He likes the herbs in his old age. Okay, Mas says, Hatman, have you heard Hasbulla versus Khan catchweight exhibition to raise funds for the Middle East? No, I haven't heard about that. That sounds quite bizarre, but obviously it wouldn't even be a sparring session. I don't know what that would be. Touch sparring, tickle sparring. I don't know what kind of sparring you call that. Amir Khan versus Hasbulla. Hurtgate says, Hatman, do you think Dana has an actual chance to take over boxing? I think he's got a chance, but I don't think he'll manage to do it. And you know, I was maybe a little hasty in dismissing Eddie Hearn's signing of Tom Aspinall as a publicity stunt, because there is, given the mutiny which is taking place in UFC right now, there is the possibility that this could actually branch out into something much broader and more significant. Because Eddie Hearn was pointing out that, according to him at least, Tom Aspinall has made more money just in the past few days since signing with Hearn from sponsorships than he made for his last fight in terms of the purse. And they're looking to continue that moving forward. And if Aspinall is able to make loads and loads of money, aside from the purses, that is surely going to attract more UFC fighters. And Matchroom are a machine. That's surely going to attract more UFC fighters. And again, the pressure on UFC to increase fighter pay is going to get greater and greater and greater. And I've long said, and I did a Patreon episode about this on a boxing tier a couple of weeks ago, I don't think the UFC model, see, that's the irony. They're trying to introduce the UFC model into boxing with Zuffa, but I don't think the UFC model is even sustainable long-term in MMA. Look at all the lawsuits flying around now. Look at all these high-profile UFC fighters who are openly disgruntled about what they're being paid. Michael Venom Page, who's doing quite well in UFC now, he was bold enough to openly say the pay ain't what it should be after Conor Benn got 15 mil for signing with Zuffa. So, and Eddie Hearn pointed out, you don't need the budget of a UFC in order to pay the fighters more than UFC pay them. You don't. That might be the critical flaw in the UFC model. Because they take such an enormous percentage of the revenue, like 80%, and the fighters get 20%. You don't need to make as much as UFC. If you just do the traditional, let's say, boxing revenue split, let's say you're a rival MMA company and you're willing to pay the fighters 80% and you keep 20%, obviously then you don't need the budget of UFC to pay the fighters more than UFC. You see how that works? That's a critical flaw in the UFC model. But they've had so much control and they keep buying up competitors and all this kind of stuff. They've managed to stave all of that off for now. But I don't know how much longer they can do that. And this Eddie Hearn move, again, in retrospect, it might be a little more interesting than I first assumed it would be. Because like I say, when he's helping Tom Aspinall to do all these sponsorship deals and he's making a load of money, if you can attract more UFC fighters, that's going to put real pressure on the UFC. Real pressure. Toby says, Bob offered to take a reporter to where he buys all his greenery and edibles. He said, it's not like the old days when you just had to take what your dealer had. Yo, Bob's wild. Matt Borgerson says, Eddie's going to get sued. Is he? How? On what grounds? I'm not dismissing what you're saying. I'm just inquiring. Did I see the John Jones Hasbulla video? Yeah, unfortunately I did. And I wish I hadn't. Roulette, I guess he's being sarcastic, says, Hatman, why do you lie and tell me you don't watch EastEnders or celebrate Christmas? I assume you're being sarcastic. Shout out to Luca for the super chat. He says, don't the UFC make 57% profit from turnover? I don't know what their profit is, but I know what the split is as far as how much of the profit is taken by the company as opposed to by the fighters. And it's roughly 80-20, which is the inverse of boxing. In boxing, the 80% goes to the fighters, 20% goes to the promoter. In UFC, 80% for the promoter, 20% for the fighters. Mr. Lucas says, I saw that the other day. Okay. I mean, that's a huge profit margin, by the way. If they're making 57% profit from turnover, that's a huge profit margin. Most major companies, many major companies, their profit margin is nowhere near that big. They make a profit, but not like that. So in other words, of all the money they make, once all the expenses and everything are taken out, they're left with 57% of the money as pure profit. Again, from a business perspective, that's a hell of a business. Given the size of the business, do you know what I mean? All the stuff they have to pay for, that's a hell of a profit margin. Krasser says, who is worse, Jeremy Kyle or Gordon Ramsay? And how long would you have lasted working for Ramsay before the hands fly? Well, Jeremy Kyle is a despicable, absolutely despicable cretin. I wouldn't even call him a human being. Gordon Ramsay, I actually am thoroughly entertained by. I wouldn't want to work in his kitchen. And the hands would fly, sooner rather than later. But, that's the way he runs his kitchen because he's a perfectionist and he wants the he came up winning the Michelin stars and all that kind of business. That's the culture in serious restaurants and whatnot in the kitchen. But I've always liked Gordon Ramsay's shows. So, definitely I dislike Jeremy Kyle way more, and I actually like Gordon Ramsay. Although he looks kind of weird now since he had that plastic surgery. Because Gordon Ramsay has got this really wrinkled, crease-up face, and he had this big wrinkle thing on his chin, and he got that filled in with Botox or something, and now he looks weird. It don't look like the Ramsay of old. He should have kept it. Big up Arco. Finish work early. Happy days. Big up Goozy. Shout out to everyone just locking in. You can see the headline there. Major news sources are reporting that Top Rank have signed with DAZN. User says, which sports athletes would transfer well into boxing that are not in combat sports? It's really impossible to say. Because boxing is so much more than just athleticism. There are some guys who are fantastic athletes and they can't fight to save their lives. So it's really, really impossible to say. If you're not coming from a combat sports background, it's so hard to say. We got Matt Borges and he says, I heard he's a major pain and very hated. A big up Toby, he says, I was talking to a mate in America and I said Dana has a lot of things going on at the moment with Zuffa, with running Zuffa, UFC, Power Slap, lawsuits, keeping Turkey shareholders and Trump happy. Yeah, he is spreading himself pretty thin, but he's got a whole team. Dana, as many people have pointed out, is more like a face. He isn't necessarily the one pulling the levers and pressing the buttons behind the scenes. Matt Borgerson says, yeah, I'm talking about Turkey. Yeah, I'm aware you're talking about Turkey, yeah. I wasn't surprised to hear about this fallout with Turkey and Frank Warren, because they are both known to be, Frank Warren, even in public, he's known to be a fiery character. But from what I hear, Turkey is a fiery character behind the scenes. So when you've got two fiery characters that really want to have things their own way, there's an obvious clash waiting to happen there. So in my mind, it was maybe only a matter of time before that happened. Big up Glum Coyote for the super chat. He says, I'm a free marketer and thus deem every monopoly nefarious. Netflix assuredly is draining the life force of cinema. Yeah, you make a good point there. But cinema isn't really helping itself with the quality of product that they're putting out now. You know? Rehashing old franchises over and over again, comic book movies. Everything is heavily politicized now. You know? The stuff that Hollywood is committing to cinema at this point is very low quality compared to decades gone by. The 1990s, for example, was, in my lifetime, a high point for cinema. The past 26 years, it's been going steadily downhill, even before Netflix became a major player. So, yeah, although Netflix, you could definitely argue, is sucking the life out of cinema to some extent, Hollywood is helping it do that by churning out garbage. Netflix don't have much to compete with at this stage in terms of what's coming out of Hollywood. Shout out to Summers Boxing. Herc Gates says they don't call him Bricktop for nothing. Indeed. Feed him to the pigs, Errol. Arco says, I also enjoy the grainy quality of filters in older movies as opposed to overly crispy or sanitized visuals of today. Yeah, the overly clean look. Also, I saw a video on YouTube a few weeks ago, and it was talking about depth of field and focal length and all this, technical film talk. And it basically was trying to explain why movies of old, let's say in the 90s and earlier, were more immersive because they had a much deeper depth of field as far as the focus. These days, the tendency is to have a really shallow depth of field. A shallow focal length rather than basically, to put it in layman's terms, in a lot of old movies, everything in shot is in focus, right? The background is in focus, the foreground is in focus, the midground, everything's in focus. Whereas the tendency today in movies is for the foreground to be very, very sharp and in focus, and the background to be far less in focus, if at all. Sometimes it's, what do they call it, bokeh, where it's totally out of focus. So there's a much heavier emphasis today in cinema of this like stylized way of shooting, this stylized look that they're going for rather than a realistic look. Whereas the movies of old looked more immersive because it was more realistic. It was more like what you would see when you walk out of your door and look around. Old movies were more representative of that visually. Whereas new movies are all trying to be, expressing all this visual flair and this, that, trying to outdo each other with visual flair. And there's something to be said of the simplicity of the old movies in terms of the way the visuals were composed. Goozy says, I would say today's writers are whack, rarely get a good story and too much CGI. And you know, you bring up a good point there. CGI may have made cinematographers lazy. The prevalence of CGI might actually be diminishing the art of cinematography. Because you can do everything digitally now. Why do people need to learn the skills that they used to learn with the camera when everything can be done digitally? So you make a good point. Glom Coyote says current movies feel like a childish vignette. Summers Boxing says, Hatman, what do you think of the Jake Paul MMA event? Got some big names on there: Ngannou, Mike Perry, Nate Diaz, and Ronda Rousey. I think it's an interesting move by Jake Paul, branching out into MMA rather than just boxing. Obviously, it's a bunch of old UFC fighters, you know, particularly Nate Diaz and Mike Perry. Ronda Rousey's a bit younger, I think. Ngannou's still current, so that's a big name there. I think it's interesting. Jake Paul's a very smart businessman. He's fought a lot of these ex-MMA fighters. Do you know what I mean? Now he's recruiting them to fight on one of his cards. So I think it's a smart business move by Jake Paul. Let's see where it goes. Will Jake Paul be able to create something that might rival the UFC in some way? Yeah? Going off what I just said a few minutes ago. You don't need the budget of a UFC to pay MMA fighters more than the UFC pay them, because the UFC underpay their fighters to such an extreme extent. Ronda Rousey, I'm sure, is getting paid more to be on this Jake Paul show, and Jake Paul MVP don't have the money UFC have, but I'm sure she's getting paid more for this than she was paid for a lot of her UFC fights. Which proves my point. That's the critical flaw in the UFC model. Shout out to Fernie G. Yeah, I'm aware of the Tommy Hearns situation. He says he was getting scammed. I'm aware of the situation. Tommy Hearns is one of these fighters who is clearly suffering from pugilistic dementia. His speech has been bad for years. And that normally leads to pretty rapid cognitive decline. So I'm aware of the situation with Tommy Hearns. We wish him the best. Goozy says, some UFC commentators are already saying Jake Paul is Dana's biggest rival in future. Goozy says AI will make CGI look like baby stuff. Well, actually, I saw a CGI, an AI, I saw an AI music video for Eminem's track Brain Damage. And it was actually pretty damn good. That might be the best AI music video I've seen. Any of you guys seen it as well? The music video for Eminem's Brain Damage. I'm not sure who made it, but they did a pretty damn good job. I always wanted to see a music video for that track. Definitely, for me, one of my favorite Eminem tracks. Big up Luca for the super chat. He says, when is Paul going to make attempt with male boxing? Shots fired. Well, the thing is, Luca, Jake Paul has found his niche, hasn't he? He's done these novelty events starring himself. And off the back of the novelty events, he has carefully picked certain female fights to put on the undercard, which are likely to be entertaining. Taylor Serrano, right? He's now signed Caroline Dubois, who, as female fighters go, is more entertaining than most. So he's found his niche, right? And now he's building on the niche. If he went, you know, to doing male boxing, like normal male boxing, not starring himself, I'm not sure there's an opportunity yet for him to do that. Does that make sense? There's an old saying, you get in where you fit in. And I think his business and his promotion has very cleverly got in where they fit in. They found a groove. They found a niche for themselves to get in. And now he's just growing that out. Will he eventually do like normal male boxing? Maybe. But what he's doing right now is working. Yeah. The gimmicky stuff with himself, the female boxing on the undercard, and now branching into MMA. I think all of this is very logical because no one else is really specializing in the areas he's specializing in to the same extent. When it comes to influencer boxing, he is the guy. He is the poster child for influencer boxing. So he's got that absolutely on lock. Conquered that game. Then he moved into the female boxing, and then he's invested and prioritized female boxing to a much greater extent than any of the other promoters. And he's picked the right fighters and the right fights. So he's done that very well. He's got that niche on lock. And now he's moving into MMA. It's very interesting. He's found another opportunity there because of the platform that he's built with Netflix. The relationship he's built with Netflix is giving him this big platform. He's consistently delivering in terms of revenue for Netflix. And now he's using that to segue into MMA amidst all of this mutiny that's going on with UFC fighters. And he's got Ronda Rousey up there in press conferences slagging off the UFC. Like, it's very, very clever by Jake Paul. Very clever. Very, very clever. Goozy says, there's also an AI female actress completely made up and she looks so real. I actually saw a story pop up on Instagram today. I don't know if it's even true, but it was apparently this Chinese, like I say, ostensibly a Chinese woman who would do social media content, but it turned out to be a Chinese man using a AI filter. And he had thousands of subscribers and donations and all this kind of stuff. It's actually a woman. I mean, actually a man. Using an AI filter. Every day I'm hustling. Every day I'm hustling. Every day I'm hustling. Crazy. Lucas says, I think he could maybe do something there with regards to Jake Paul moving into male boxing. Maybe, but I don't necessarily think the time is right just yet. I think he should continue to build what he's doing as far as the female boxing and the MMA. And if that becomes a success, it'll put him in a better position to then start doing real male boxing. Toby says, Jake Paul and Ben Shalom both started about the same time, but Jake Paul has done much better. Without a big skylight deal and budget, Jake has done better in my opinion. Well, yeah, he's done better, but his brand was much bigger than Boxer's brand, to be fair. Yeah, he didn't have a TV budget, but he had an enormous following, and he was a global brand as Jake Paul and the Paul brothers. When Ben Shalom was totally unknown, his business was totally unknown. So Jake Paul had a head start in that regard, you know, just being a massive brand in and of himself. And again, we're hearing that Jake Paul is going to do a deal with Sky Sports in the UK. I don't know whether that's been confirmed, but that's what we're hearing on the grapevine. $125 concurrent viewers, 48 likes. Can we get the likes up to 62, folks? Be much appreciated. I like to try and keep the likes to concurrent viewer ratio at around 50%. So if we can get 62 likes, 63 likes, it'll be much. 64 likes even, because the concurrent viewers are fluctuating here. But let's get over 60 likes. If you can stick a like on the stream, thank you in advance. Glum Coyote says, talking of garbage, UFC is being criticized from absolutely everywhere since the Paramount deal. Shout out to Yems. He says, apparently Miller is fighting Perro next. Which Perro? There are two Perro brothers. Neither of them are particularly good. But the shorter of the two is the one who's worse. Isn't he with Eddie Hearn now? One of the Perro brothers anyway? Didn't they sign with Eddie Hearn? Yem says, apparently, yeah, okay, Miller's right. Well, if Miller does fight Perro, unless Miller is diminished beyond recognition, then he should beat the snot out of the guy. That should be relatively easy work for Miller if he turns up in any kind of shape at all. Oh, it's the one who fought Jordan Thompson. Okay. The one who fought Jordan Thompson, that's the taller of the two, isn't it? The shorter one fought some Mexican guy and got dropped and nearly knocked out. It's the taller of the two, I think, that fought Jordan Thompson. JR says, do you think this new movie Disclosure Day is softly prepping the public for actual disclosure of things hidden from the public regarding crash retrievals? That's one possibility. Another possibility is that it's conditioning the public for some kind of fake, staged alien invasion. You know, these people love to pull ridiculous staged events, so that's a possibility. Both things are possibilities. Glum Coyote is asking the chat, is everyone a rationalist here? Or is animism and numerology popular? I'm very interested in animism. You know, a lot of pagan spiritual belief systems are animistic. This is, for those who don't know, the concept that all living things and even inanimate things have got a spiritual character to them. You know, like there's a tree spirit, river spirit, sun, earth, moon, animal spirits, so on and so forth, animism. Numerology is the concept that numbers have a deeper meaning, especially corresponding to words. And, numerology is an extremely deep subject, so it's kind of difficult to describe it in a nutshell. But people can encode certain things within numbers or use certain words that are represented by certain numbers or vice versa to encode hidden meaning, hidden messages and stuff like that. That's numerology. So for example, from the perspective of, let's say, a Christian eschatologist, they might look for words where the number 666 is encoded in them. That goes into like gematria, right? And there are various forms of gematria where each letter of the alphabet is ascribed a number. Matt Borgerson says, Teofimo Lopez versus Liam Parrow in talks for the end of 2026. Hang on, isn't Liam Parrow supposed to be fighting, why do I always forget his name? The IBF welterweight champion from Northern Ireland. Why do I keep forgetting his name? It's crazy. Toby Butler says, Jake could have flopped on a big scale too if he didn't make good business decisions. Jake is brilliant at marketing his brand and promoting. He should stick to promoting MVP, I think. Lewis Crocker, thank you. Why do I keep forgetting Lewis Crocker's name? Yeah, isn't Liam Parrow supposed to be fighting Lewis Crocker? I heard that fight got postponed, but isn't it still going ahead? Summers Boxing says, I got well into numerology at one point, but I don't know, there's a lot of BS theories out there too. Well, yeah, the problem that I found with gematria, right, which is a particular, could you call it a branch of numerology? But the problem I found with gematria is that there are too many types of gematria. There's like Pythagorean gematria and English gematria. There's loads of different kinds of gematria. And so if you're determined to find hidden meaning in a particular word, you're going to run it through all these different gematria calculators and find one of them shows a hidden meaning. Do you know what I mean? It's like, that doesn't seem very scientific. That's the problem with gematria. Yeah, that's correct, Glum Coyote. Numerology and Kabbalah have a strong connection. Indeed, Kabbalah, the Zohar, it's, numerology is extremely deep in those texts. I'm not a massive horror movie fan, just to change gears a second here. I do watch horror movies every now and then. There's one horror movie which I've not yet seen, but I've been wanting to get round to seeing it because I quite enjoyed the first one. And that is Smile 2. That's something that just popped up on Netflix recently. I think it's going to release on Netflix on the 31st of this month, at least in my location. And I've been meaning to watch that for a minute because the trailer just cracked me up, looked hilarious. There's another movie which I watched some time ago. What is the name of it though? It's a very interesting movie, interesting concept. Let me try and get the name up here. So I've forgotten it. Let me see. Subservience. That's the movie. 2024 sci-fi thriller starring Megan Fox. Anyone seen that movie, Subservience? That's a pretty good watch. JR says Smile 3 starring Calla Sowland. Brilliant. Yep. Smile 3, he's a natural fit. That's actually amazing. Yeah, Smile 3 starring Calla Sowland. That's the comment of the day. Okay, Free Coffee Guy says Smile 1 made me laugh all the way, or made me laugh all throughout. Smile 2 was actually alright. So I guess you're saying Smile 1 was better than Smile 2. The curse of the sequel. Who can name a movie series where the second film was better than the first? Any suggestions? Which movie series is there, and I'm sure there are some, where the second movie is better than the first? JR says Empire Strikes Back. Yeah, that's one of them. Terminator, debatable. It was certainly bigger than the first, but was it better? Very different kind of movies. Matt Borgerson says Aliens. I disagree on that one. I much prefer Alien to Aliens. But again, very different kind of movies. Yeah, I prefer the first Terminator and the first Alien movie. Darker, more gritty, more atmospheric. Don't get it twisted. The sequels are both great. Aliens is a great movie, and Terminator 2 is a particularly great movie. For me, Terminator 2 is better than Aliens. At the time when they came out, Aliens was fantastically impressive. I loved it. But I think Terminator 2 has aged a bit better, for me anyway. Otto says Matrix. Yeah, I got to disagree on that one too. I got the first Matrix being better than the second one, although the second one is very good as well. Someone says Back to the Future. I much prefer Back to the Future 1 over Back to the Future 2. Back to the Future 2 is good, but I prefer the first one. The Dark Knight. Now that's one I definitely agree on. Oh, yes. 100%. The Dark Knight. See, again, it's all subjective. Some people prefer Batman Begins. But for me, I definitely prefer The Dark Knight over Batman Begins. 100%. And I think the majority of the public agree on that one too. That Dark Knight is stronger than Batman Begins. Mainly because of the villain. Heath Ledger's Joker was just so iconic. Liam Neeson was cool as Ra's al Ghul, but he wasn't the memorable, iconic movie villain that Heath Ledger's Joker was. Matt Borgerson says Bone Temple better than 28 Years One. Yes, but that's not the second movie though, is it? The second movie would have been 28 weeks later. They've just reprised or revived the series a couple of decades after the previous movie. So the Bone Temple is actually the fourth movie in the series. Charles B says Blade Runner. I'd agree with that. Yep, I'd agree. Big up Charles B. I'd agree with that. I know the original Blade Runner, there's a lot of nostalgia, and it was a very influential movie for its time in terms of the aesthetics. It influenced a lot of pop culture, believe it or not, the aesthetics of Blade Runner, the world building. But as a movie, objectively, yeah, the sequel, Blade Runner, what is it, 2049? It's a better movie. It's a better movie. So yeah, I'd agree with Charles B on that one. Someone says Bad Boys 2. I'm not sure I've even seen Bad Boys 2, and if I have, it didn't make much of an impression on me. People are saying Godfather 2. I like both Godfather 1 and 2. I'm not sure I can necessarily pick a better. I mean, Godfather 2 is more expansive, you know. It's obviously Michael Corleone growing into the role of being the Godfather, but you know, I like the first Godfather as well. So, you know, I probably agree. If push comes to shove, I probably agree that the second is better than the first. All the backstory and going to Sicily and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, I probably agree. But first Godfather was good as well. I like the scene in the restaurant, you know, where Al Pacino smokes. That guy, what do they call him, that guy? He's like an Italian guy that is from Turkey or something. I forget what they call him. What's the character's name? Al Pacino smokes him. Matt Borgerson says Top Gun Maverick. I couldn't really comment on that because I don't remember the first Top Gun. I might have seen it when I was a kid, but I don't remember it. I did see Top Gun Maverick and it was decent, but... JR says, I preferred Indiana Jones Temple of Doom to Raiders of the Lost Ark. Shout out to KO Talk. He says, Schofield Sr. versus Nathan Cleverly for the Rainbow title. Who wins? All right, so to give you some context there, folks, Floyd Schofield Sr., despite being an ex-con and a tough-talking guy, there's something zesty about him. I think we can all see that. He's got a zesty energy. Nathan Cleverly, I'm not sure why, but has recently popped back up. Not that he's been anywhere, you know, because the guy disappeared after the Kovalev fight. He's been disappeared the whole time. But some of his recent videos on social media have been doing the rounds in boxing circles, highlighting the fact that he now runs a tanning salon. And his look now is a little surprising. Let's just put it that way. He's got some filter on in one video, smoothing out his face. Looks like he's got eyebrow piercing, nose piercing. It's like, okay. I don't know what to make of all that. But who wins the Rainbow title? I'm actually going to say Schofield Sr. There were some funny comments on that Nathan Cleverly post. People say he looks like a cross between Boy George and and who else was it? There's some other singer, something Smith. Is it Sam Smith? Is that the name of the guy? So he looks like a cross between Boy George and I think Sam. Is it Sam Smith? I have to look up because I took a screenshot of the comments and posted it in my Element group. Where did I put that screenshot? I can remember the name of that singer. Give me a second here, peeps. Okay, here we go. In fact, let me get this up on screen. Just for the bants. So these were some of the comments on that Nathan Cleverly video that was doing the rounds. The first guy says, looks like he's been getting battered round the other ring now. Nathan not looking so cleverly. Looks more like the DJ from the Blue Oyster Bar, says someone. Yeah, Sam Smith crossed with Boy George. The internet is undefeated. The internet is totally undefeated. Dear, oh dear, oh dear. McCloskey is the Irish cop that Michael smokes. Yeah, he smokes the Irish cop, but he also smokes the other guy. He's like an Italian, Sicilian guy from Turkey. I can't remember what the character's name is in the movie. Lucas says, if someone says Lord of the Rings, big up Chili Beef. I actually prefer the first Lord of the Rings movie, but I think most people prefer the second one. And that's okay. Again, it's all subjective, innit? And they're both great movies. The first movie and the second movie are both great. So I couldn't really grumble at people saying the second movie over the first. But personally, I preferred the first movie. In fact, Chili Beef's a good person to ask this question. Name me a movie series where the second movie was better than the first. I'm sure Chili Beef's going to come up with a long list. Gorguga says Back to the Future 2. Yeah, someone else said that previously in the chat. I personally prefer the first movie. And one of the things that was missing from the sequel, from the second, and the second movie's great, by the way. I recently rewatched the Back to the Future movies. Fantastic movies. Amazing chemistry between Doc Brown and Marty. But one of the things that was missing from the second movie was George McFly, because there was a fallout with the actor Crispin. Is it Crispin Glover? It's Crispin Glover, isn't it? The name of the actor. He fell out with the makers of or the studio or whatever it was, Back to the Future, and that's why he wasn't in the second one. And that's why the actor that they got to replace him only appears in one scene, and he's hanging upside down. And they've got a bunch of prosthetic makeup on his face. That is done to disguise the fact that it's a different actor. That version of George McFly is a different actor to the first movie. And he's great in the first movie, George McFly. So it's a shame that he wasn't in the second. They did use some like B-roll footage for certain scenes of him in the second movie, come to think of it. At a distance, like when he punches out Biff outside of that ball party, whatever you want to call it. Cookie says, Back to the Future musical is awesome, currently up in the West End. Is that right? Oh, he's just known as the Turk, is he? Just known as the Turk. Or Solozo. Okay. Solozo is the Turk. All right, yeah. When Michael Corleone pops him and McCloskey in the restaurant, I always like that scene. Because you can see how nervous Michael is. And at that stage, he's not a shooter. You know, he's come from the military, so he's a shooter in the military. But, you know, on the streets, he's not a shooter. He's replacing Sonny. So you can see how nervous he is in that scene, and he has to go to the bathroom to get the piece, and he comes back and pops them both. I always like that scene. Kylie says, Home Alone 2 was probably as good as the first one. Tim Curry cracks me up in that film. It's been so long since I watched the Home Alone movies, I couldn't even remember Home Alone 2. I just remember in those movies, you had Joe Pesci playing a great comedic role. And there's a scene where Joe Pesci gets his hair burned off and he looks like Jerome Miller in his last fight. Yeah, I agree with JR. Fellowship of the Ring has a certain charm about it, which for me, The Two Towers didn't have. The Two Towers, again, great movie, but a very different tone and a different kind of movie. I liked, as I say, as JR said there, the charm of the first movie. The second movie's like way darker. Nothing wrong with a darker movie. Again, I prefer the first Terminator and the first Alien movies over the second movies, and the first movies were darker. Matt Borgerson says Return of the King is top 10 all time. So is that your favorite Lord of the Rings movie, Return of the King? I think the most popular one with the public is the second one, The Two Towers. Pretty sure that's the most popular for most people. That's their favorite. But some, like me, prefer the first one. I guess you prefer the third. I think one of the reasons I prefer the first movie is because there's more mystery in it. You know, the second movie, there isn't as much mystery, and it's more about an impending battle. Do you know what I mean? And it builds up to this kind of crescendo. But the first movie is more about like the mysteries of Middle Earth and all that kind of stuff. And I've always been someone that's interested in mysteries. Charles B says Fellowship has one of the greatest openings ever. He says, I see them all as one big movie. Matt Borgerson, big up. He says Peter Dinklage, is hated by the short community. Yeah, that's true. I've seen Hornswoggle and a bunch of these other like dwarves come out and have a go at him. They say that he's moving foul and he's doing things to actually take jobs away from other little people. For those who don't know, Peter Dinklage is the guy that plays Tyrion Lannister in Game of Thrones. And there's loads of other little actors, dwarves and whatnot, who say that he's moving foul and he's making it difficult for other dwarves. Yeah, they might as well just swing it out. They might as well. Jake Paul could put it on. Let's get Hornswoggle versus Dinklage on the undercard of a Jake Paul fight. JR says Ian McKellen was originally supposed to narrate the opening for the Fellowship. You know what? I was thinking about narration, voiceover the other day, because there came a point amongst the movie critic community where they would just bash any director that used the voiceover in a movie. They would say it's lazy filmmaking. In some cases it might be, and in some cases the voiceover don't work. But in many cases the voiceover works fantastically. So for example, I think in Apocalypse Now the voiceover worked great. I think there might have been a version of the movie where there was no voiceover, but no, the voiceover worked great in Apocalypse Now. And people say it's lazy filmmaking and you're insulting the intelligence of your audience by having a voiceover. But I would disagree with that, because what the voiceover is the inner monologue of the character, right? Most people, not all people, have an inner monologue. And that is what the voiceover represents, the inner monologue. When, in some movies, when there isn't an inner monologue, the visual storytelling is so ambiguous that you're just left guessing, like, what the hell is going on and what the hell is he thinking about? Now, that might work well for some movies, but for other movies, it doesn't work well at all. So I think that voiceover is actually a little bit underused now in Hollywood because of this silly kind of viewpoint, opinion that became almost ubiquitous among film critics, that voiceover is terrible. And, you know, if your movie's got a voiceover in it, they're instantly going to bash it. Like, give it a rest. I think voiceover is actually underused a little bit now. And as I say, one of the examples of it being used very well was in Apocalypse Now. It was used fantastically. A lot of the voiceover dialogue is iconic in Apocalypse Now. No, not all people do have an inner monologue, bizarrely. Some people don't have it. It's very strange. And it's a pretty significant minority of people that don't have one. Eldon Joe says, I can't watch Lord of the Rings again. Good films, but too long. It depends on how much you love the world. You know, I'm one of these people that fell in love with the world of Lord of the Rings. You know what I mean? The atmosphere of it. So I can watch the movies, even though they're long movies, easily. They breeze by when I watch them. Because I just love the world so much. JR says the cinematography in Apocalypse Now was ahead of its time. That's a whole fact. Eldon Joel says, I can't imagine not hearing thoughts as words. Me neither. But apparently a lot of people do. They don't hear thoughts as words. It's kind of difficult to comprehend exactly what goes on inside the mind of a person that doesn't have an inner monologue, how it all works. And by the way, I got a question for Eldon Joe. I'm assuming you're an Elden Ring guy. Is that where you got the name from? And if you are an Elden Ring guy, how many of the From Software games have you played? Telstar says the concept of immortality being a blessing and a curse was always something I liked about Lord of the Rings. Yeah, with the elves and whatnot. One of the big decisions that Peter Jackson made with the movies is not including, what's that character called? The immortal, all-powerful character. Can't remember his name now. Who was in the books but not in the movies. He's like a major character that's immortal. Anybody tell me his name? And also, originally they were going to show Sauron in his physical form at the end of the third movie. But they decided not to, and just to keep him as this eye instead. Tom Bombadil. Thank you, Charles B. Yes, Tom Bombadil. Yeah, that's the one. Tom Bombadil was not in the movies at all. I reckon there would have been some pretty hardcore Tolkien fans that were horrified, disgusted, upset that Tom Bombadil wasn't in the movie. But I understand the cinematic choice to not include him. Big up James Clifford. He says, Tom Bombadil, the movie Hail Mary is getting excellent reviews. And a bonus will be seeing the June Part 3 trailer, if anyone is off to the cinemas soon. Hail Mary, what's the movie about? Let me look it up quick. I nearly repeated something which I definitely wouldn't repeat here on here on YouTube. Not because I support this particular individual, all right? But there's a certain song, probably the most controversial song that's come out over the past few years. The song title is 2 words. And the first word is the German version of Hail. Heil. I'm not co-signing the song, but all I can tell you is the song is catchy. I'm not even going to lie. Now, never mind what the lyrics say, all that kind of stuff. Like objectively, that song is actually catchy. I'm not even going to lie. Right, I'm looking up the movie here. Okay, Ryan Gosling, is he in it? So it's called Project Hail Mary. Is that the full title? Project Hail Mary with Ryan Gosling? Is that Ryan Gosling? Yeah. Okay, early screenings of Project Hail Mary are underway. Let me do another search here, because the first time I only put up Hail Mary. Now, full title is Project Hail Mary. Says here, "2026 American science fiction action adventure film, produced and directed by Phil Lord and Christopher Miller, and written by Drew Goddard, based on the 2021 novel by Andy Weir. It stars Ryan Gosling, who also produced the film, Sandra Hüller, James Ortiz, Lionel Boyce. The film follows the story of Ryland Grace, a man who awakens on an interstellar spacecraft with no memory of how he came to be there. Hail Mary premiered in London on March 9th and is scheduled to be released in the United States by Amazon MGM Studios on March 20, 2026. The film received positive reviews from critics. Okay, sounds right up my street. I like that kind of sci-fi. I like Ryan Gosling. This is an insta watch for me. So big up the suggestion there from James Clifford. Thank you very much. That sounds right up my street. Exactly the kind of movie I go for. Matt Borgerson says it's better than The Martian. So you've seen it. It's not yet March 20. Have you managed to see it before it's released? That's another one. Yes, Triple R. Thank you for reminding me. Carlito's Way has a voiceover, which is done very well. Excellent. Yes, and the voiceover is also iconic in Carlito's Way. They do it fantastically in that movie. And don't get it twisted, I really like Scarface, but I do think Carlito's Way, I would say I think most people would prefer Carlito's Way over Scarface if they watched those movies. I think Carlito's Way has aged a bit better than Scarface. But I still like Scarface. I still like the whole 80s aesthetic and everything, and the music. Fantastic score. But yeah, the voiceover in Carlito's Way is great. I've never actually seen The Martian, but I've heard, you know, got good reviews and whatnot. Fernie G says, did you enjoy Bright, Hatman? No, I didn't. No. I tried to watch Bright, but I couldn't. No. I generally don't like Will Smith or his movies. The only thing I like Will Smith in was The Fresh Prince, pretty much. Other than that, yeah, that's it, really. Just The Fresh Prince. I don't like Will Smith in anything else. He's corny. Kylie says, I like how Ray Liotta would break the fourth wall in Goodfellas. Yeah, that was good. For those who don't know the term the fourth wall is looking in directly into the camera. So basically looking at the audience. That's something which is generally discouraged or flat out not allowed in most movies. They don't want the actors looking directly into the camera. But that is done several times in Goodfellas to very good effect. Because there's voiceover in Goodfellas, right? And the voiceover is explaining things to the audience rather than just an inner monologue. Because like with Apocalypse Now, it's more like an inner monologue type voiceover. But in Goodfellas, it's like an explaining, it's inner monologue, but it's also explaining to the audience type voiceover. Almost like he's sitting on a psychiatrist's couch talking about his life. Do you know what I mean? That's the kind of voiceover that's in Goodfellas. And then you get the payoff where he literally turns towards the end of the movie, where he literally turns and looks directly into the camera. So it's as if he's been explaining his story to the audience sitting on a couch at home in the witness protection program. And then you finally see that reveal at the end of the movie. Do you know what I mean? Where he looks directly into the camera and talks to you. So yeah, that was very well done. Cookie's mentioning the Book of Eli randomly. Okay, I guess you like the Book of Eli. It's a pretty good film. I like the concept. It's got Denzel Washington, Gary Oldman. JR says, I like Will Smith in King Richard. Will Smith's just one of these corny guys who I just can't, you know how certain actors, like they used to say about Morgan Freeman, they add gravitas to a movie. Will Smith is like the opposite of that. He's like the anti-gravitas. He takes any gravitas away. He's like a gravitas vacuum. He's so lightweight and corny. I can't do it, bro. The only thing he ever worked well in was The Fresh Prince, where he was being himself, who's like a corny, happy-go-lucky character. And he played himself. Even, his name was his real name in The Fresh Prince, Will Smith. And it worked for that show. But anything else, no. I can't do it. He plays kind of like a tough guy cop in Bad Boys, and I'm like, nah, man. I mean, I understand the comedic side of it, but just, nah. Martin Lawrence in Bad Boys was cool, but Will Smith, he's supposed to be a tough guy cop? Like, nah, bro. Nah. Anthony YouTube says, do you think Michael B. Jordan warranted winning an Oscar for Smoke and Stack in Sinners? To be honest with you, I pay no attention to the Oscars whatsoever. I don't think the Oscars are credible. And so who wins what and why, I really don't care. I'm not surprised that he's won Oscars. I thought that Sinners was an okay film, nothing special. But I'm speaking from the perspective of an old timer. Maybe for new, younger people who haven't seen so many movies and don't realize that kind of the plot was, I don't want to say ripped off, but heavily influenced by From Dusk Till Dawn. And a lot of the concepts in there, I mean, I did a deep dive decoding of Sinners on my Patreon page. And that movie was the easiest movie I've ever had to decode, because the symbolism is so blatant, it's so in your face, it's barely veiled at all, It's just so easy to decode that movie. It's just so in your face. There's nothing subtle about it. Whereas with other movies, the symbolism is far more layered. It's not as easy to catch. I mean, the first Matrix movie being a great example, it's just absolutely steeped in all sorts of esoteric symbolism in there. Whereas Sinners, symbolism is so much more obvious and blatant and put there to be noticed. Funny G says, you have to say the Will Smith bar now. Yeah, just because I'm an action star, sometimes I'm an actor. Even though I'm an action star. Sounds like something out of a Hollywood theater production, There's no business like show business, even though I'm an action star. Sometimes I'm an actor. What kind of bars are those? Crazy. JR says, Sinners is not Oscars worthy. It shows how trash Hollywood has become when movies like that are winning. But that's the thing, though. If it won, and all the other movies that came out the same year were trash, then it did deserve to win. Do you know what I mean? But it's a sign of the times that the Oscar-winning movies today are so much weaker than the Oscar-winning movies of yesteryear. But like I said, I don't even pay any attention to the Oscars anyway. Pick up Hannibal Beats. Just dropped his wrench on the Will Smith bars. But yeah, Carlito's Way, great voiceover in that movie. And one of the best, I mean, the dialogue for the voiceover is poetic in Carlito's Way. You know, at the end of the movie when he's been shot by Benny Blanco? And he's saying, he's like on his deathbed basically saying, he's talking about a funeral home on 9th Street. I always knew I'd make a stop there, but a lot later than a whole gang of people thought. Last of the Mohicans. Well, maybe not the last. Big up FIFA. He says, big up Hatman, broke up with my girlfriend last week. She sent some abuse last night, so I told her to say Luke Partridge out loud to cheer her up. In Partridge we trust. You know, like when they say if you're attacked by demons, you say the name of Jesus Christ a bunch of time and the demons will recoil in terror. Well, the name Luke Partridge works the same way. When sadness or whatever, you're having a bad day, rain clouds over your head, just say the name Luke Partridge a few times, the sun will come out. You'll be filled with joyous laughter. Repeating the name Luke Partridge. Works a treat every time. Works a charm. Matt Borgerson says, I love The Wild Robot. Never heard of that movie. I've heard of iRobot. Did I actually see iRobot? That's a Will Smith movie. I might have seen iRobot. That was back in the bootleg DVD days. You know, those guys in the neighborhood used to sell bootleg DVDs. Usually terrible quality. You'd see people standing up in the middle of the movie because it's obviously taped off a cinema screen. Movie theater screen, as they call it in the United States. And there'd be people, you'd see silhouettes of people standing up in between them, with always coughing and stuff like that. The good old days, huh? Bootleg DVDs. Big up Matt, he says, Last of Mohican is one song played for 2 hours straight. You meant to say Mohican or Mohigan? That was a movie back in the days, The Last of the Mohicans. But yeah, that's, well, I guess you meant to say Last of the Mohicans because I was just paraphrasing or quoting from the monologue at the back end of the movie Carlito's Way. Last of the Mohicans. Well, maybe not the last. Can't come with me on this trip, though. Getting the shakes now. Last call for drinks. Bars closing down. Where are we going for breakfast? That's great. That's a great voiceover. You know what I mean? Whoever wrote that, they were on their job. JR says, what movie is your guilty pleasure, Hatman? We've all got one. Probably like Harry Potter. Don't tell anyone. Shh. Pepper says, yeah, Shawshank has to be the only prison movie I've ever watched and liked. Probably because it had a proper old school American vibe about it. Not about drug dealers or rappers being locked up. So off the top of my head, what prison movies can I remember? Obviously, Shawshank is a classic. There's also, what's the one with Sylvester Stallone? Is it called Lock Up? That movie's actually all right. It's a bit whimsical and, you know, typical Stallone. He's always a downtrodden, victimized hero. But it's not bad from what I remember. It's been many decades since I watched it. I think it's called Lock Up. Then there's comedies like Stir Crazy. That's a prison movie. Green Mile. Yep. That's a good prison movie, Green Mile. John Coffey. Okay, Matt says the only thing I liked in that movie is the one song. Yeah, they did a Carlito's Way prequel. That had P. Diddy in it. Oh my God. That had Diddy in it, didn't it? The Carlito's Way prequel. I never watched it either. I saw that they had rappers in it. I was like, nah, I ain't watching that. How's Diddy gonna be in the Carlito's Way prequel? No way. Dear, oh dear, oh dear. Yeah, Oz was a great series. For me, Oz is by far the best prison series there's ever been. I mean, somebody a while ago recommended Prison Break. That's some joke business. Prison Break is, kid stuff. That's not, But Oz was serious business. I agree, JR. Tim Burton is very hit and miss. Very, very hit and miss. Escape from Alcatraz. That's a good movie. I've seen that. Yep, that's a good movie. That's Clint Eastwood, right? Escape from Alcatraz. That's a good movie. Haven't seen Hurricane. Haven't seen The Longest Yard either. Matt says Cool Hand Luke is the best. Not sure I've seen that. Prisoner Cell Block H. Well, that was a British TV series, wasn't it? Someone's going to be mentioning Porridge next. Prisoner Cell Block H, Porridge. How did the word porridge become a euphemism for prison time in Britain? Is it because that's all you used to eat in prison? Porridge? Is that why they ended up calling prison time porridge? Nobody uses that word anymore, but it's one of those old school words I like. They still use the word bird. That's obviously because you're locked up in a cage like a bird. So it's still common in the UK to refer to a prison sentence as a bird. But porridge, nah, people don't use that word anymore. They need to bring it back. Porridge is a good word. Yeah, man, done some serious porridge. That's right, Kylie. Prisoner Cell Block H was always on at like 3 a.m. in the UK. When you'd come home from a night out, it would randomly be on TV. That's a whole fact. That is a whole fact. Someone says Blood In, Blood Out was decent. Never seen that. JR says, anyone know where the origin of the term screw comes from? Yeah, I'm not sure about that. I don't know. Oh, Cell Block H was Australian, excuse me. There's me misremembering it as British. It was Australian. Thank you for the correction, Don Gorgon. Okay, Matt Borgerson says, and big up Matt Borgerson for the super chat, James Cameron sniffs his farts and smiles. I hate him. Gorguga says, ID was a nasty Brit prison movie. Well, the first Brit prison movie I ever watched was Scum with Ray Winston. Where's your tool? Pause. That sounds crazy in this day and age, isn't it? Saying, where's your tool? Pause. Matt B Music says, Hatman speaking about movies on Joe Rogan. Crawford said Tyson Paul fight was scripted. How can people of his level be so wrong? I think because of the love they have for Mike Tyson and the disdain they have for Jake Paul. Mike Tyson is like an iconic figure beyond boxing. People love him, they idolize him, they worship him. But the vast majority of people in boxing, the vast majority of former fighters will tell you that it was not scripted at all. So there might be the odd random fighter here or there saying that, but the vast majority of people saying it's scripted are not fighters. The vast majority of people saying it is, the vast majority of people saying it was scripted are not fighters. The vast majority of people saying it's not scripted are fighters or former fighters. JR says, that's what Fleece Johnson leads with. Yeah, where's your tool? Yo, Fleece Johnson, I mean, the fact that Fleece Johnson is an internet celebrity now, that really is a sign of the times. That is a sign of the times. Fleece Johnson came out of prison known as the Booty Warrior, and he's become an internet sensation. He's on Pop the Balloon shows, interviews all over the place. Crazy. It's like all of that demonic behavior that he engaged in behind bars is paying off for him now. Can you imagine in his 60s, all of his in behind the prison bars escapades? He didn't realize at the time, but it's all paying off for him. What crazy times we live in. Yeah, Prestige is a great movie, but not really a prison movie as such. Yeah, he's in prison for parts of the movie, but it's not really a prison movie. But it is a great movie. Yeah, definitely one of my favorite Nolan movies, without a shadow of a doubt. Great film. Fleece Johnson, man. What a diabolical character. 1 second, peeps. Shout out to Claridge for the super chat. He says, Hatman, favorite boxing movie. Mine is Cinderella Man. Pop, pop, bang. Favorite boxing movie. I'll probably say Raging Bull. Yeah, I'll probably say Raging Bull. My favorite boxing movie. I mean, the Rocky movies are somewhat entertaining, but they're obviously cheesy as hell. So I'd say Raging Bull. Starring Robert De Niro, Joe Pesci. It's about the life and career of Jake LaMotta. James Clifford says, weren't many Australians once British? Well, yeah, Australia, the country, obviously Australia has been inhabited for thousands of years by the natives, but yeah, as far as European presence in Australia, it was originally a penal colony, a British penal colony, where I guess the prisoners that the British state wanted to punish the most were sent out to do their sentence in Australia, basically doing slave labor, right? Building a lot of the infrastructure and whatnot. So yeah, it started out as a British penal colony. Yeah, Will Smith as Ali was ridiculous. Some people thought that was really good. I thought it was trash. He's too corny to be Ali. And big ears and... No, man. Did he win an Oscar or something for that, or a nomination? I was like, come on, bro. Will Smith ain't no Ali. All right, 1 second, folks. JR says the nomination was only for who he was portraying. Smith was awful. Lickleman or Dinklage could have played Ali and got a nomination. Triple R says, I agree, The Fighter was a good film, even though Mark Wahlberg looked nothing like Mickey Ward. It could have been a boxing film without it being about Ward, as they did not include the Gatti fights. Wow, a film about Mickey Ward that doesn't include the Gatti fights? That's a bit weird. Fernie G says, even Jamie Foxx was corny in it. Yeah, that's a whole fact. Jamie Foxx played Bundy Brown, and he was very corny in the movie. So Will Smith's corniness was infectious. Because even Jamie Foxx, who isn't normally corny in movies, he was corny in that movie. Who's seen the boxing movie Gladiator, starring Cuba Gooding Jr.? Anyone remember that movie? Kind of a silly movie from what I remember. Man, the thunder here, there's an African thunderstorm brewing above my head right now, and it is so loud. I've said this before, but hell hath no fury like an African thunderstorm, bro. Thunderstorms here, crazy. Matt Borgerson says, Cuba is an overrated actor from one performance. I think he's a pretty good actor. Obviously, Jerry Maguire, I guess, is the role you're referring to, but he was good in Boys in the Hood. He's not one of my favorite actors, but, you know, he's decent. Those two films in particular, Boys in the Hood and Jerry Maguire. Shout out to Crip Talk. Says he likes that boxing movie Gladiator, got that guy from Oz in that. Kylie says, I've never really seen a good actor interpretation of a boxer other than De Niro and Jake LaMotta, excuse me. Goozy says, can't get that clip of Cuba Gooding Jr. in Diddy's boat out of my head when his name comes up. Fernie G says, I watched Christie this weekend. Had no idea a husband trainer tried to kill her. Above average movie. Yeah, I haven't seen that movie, but I'm aware of it. And I was aware, you know, many years ago about the situation with her husband, who, yes, was her trainer. Crip Talk says, Hatman, for a really good boxing movie, check out Jawbone. The Hand That Rocked the Cradle. Who's in that movie? God, it's years since I even heard the title of that movie. I remember when that movie came out in the 90s. Who was in it? I think I even remember the trailer vaguely. Yes, the hand that rocked the cradle. It sounds like some nonce business, doesn't it? But that was a movie which I'm pretty sure came out in the 90s. Let me look it up. Oh my gosh, there's some Mandela effect stuff going on here, folks, because I always remember it as the hand that rocked the cradle, but apparently it's called the hand that rocks the cradle. Not rocked as in ED, but rocks as in with an S. Mandela effect. I always remembered it as the hand that rocked the cradle, but now it's the hand that rocks. Is that a Mandela effect there, or misremembering? Or is all Mandela effect misremembering? You got Matt Borgerson, he says, I saw this new movie with Rock, was so bad. Has there ever been a movie with The Rock that was good? Crypt Talk says, I have a Journeyman fight next Friday. Would you ever consider doing a vid on Journeyman? It's a pretty good direction to go in for boxing, but a lot of folks don't consider it. I mean, what is there to really say about Journeyman? They're obviously under the current boxing system, necessary for the development of fighters. They help save shows. They're very, I mean, some of them are tough. And it's a very interesting mindset, isn't it? To turn up just to get beaten up. They do it literally like a 9 to 5. There are some legendary journeymen, even on the British circuit. One of them was called Peter Buckley. He retired some years ago. Kylie says, if The Rock's in it, I don't even bother. Oh, Crypt Talk, you're an actual journeyman. Okay, didn't realize that. Crypt Talk says, I've made some decent money, a lot of the time better than the home fighter. Well, I imagine, especially when you're called in at very short notice to save a fight on the card, right? Maybe the other opponent pulled out at the last minute. You got some young prospect or whoever. You got to call you in. You can drive a little bit of a hard bargain and they're like, oh, okay, pay you what you want. Yeah, Peter Buckley fought so many people, including Prince Nassim. I think Peter Buckley had, what, 200 fights? Must have had 200 fights. Let me look up Peter Buckley's record again. He might have had over 200 fights. And when did he retire? Because he definitely fought Prince Nassim back in the day. I remember when he fought Prince Nassim. And he went on for years and years and years. Usually didn't get stopped as well. Peter Buckley. He was what was known as a circuit journeyman. One of them journeymen that they would recycle over and over again. Yeah, he had 300 fights. Jeez, that was me saying 200. He had 300 professional fights. That's crazy. 300 fights. I mean, by relatively, he retired in 2008. There's me saying fairly recently. That's how old I am. 2008, fairly recent? Yeah, not really. Yeah, he retired in 2008 with 300 professional bouts under his belt. By relatively modern standards, that's mad, even for a journeyman. He fought the likes of Lee Selby. I'm just scrolling through his record now. Some of the names you may recognize. Lee Selby was there. He fought a lot of names that I don't recognize too. Especially towards the back end of his career. Lee Selby was one of the last people that he actually fought. He fought Kell Brook back in 2004. Steffi Bull. He's doing some porridge now, isn't he, Steffi Bull? Lee Beavis. What other recognizable names are on this record? This extremely long boxing record. Several pages on BoxRec. Trying to find the Prince Nassim fight. I'm certainly fought Prince Nassim. Bradley Price. Any of you guys remember him? Wasn't he from Wales, Bradley Price? Or from Sheffield? I forget now. Fought Bradley Price a couple times. Okay, Jason Cook. Steve Murray. Damn, he fought Acelino Freitas, the monstrous Brazilian puncher. I never realized he fought him. That guy who Barry Jones had a seesaw battle with, Acelino Freitas. He was a hell of a puncher. So Peter Buckley fought him. I never realized that. Who else did he fight here? Jason Booth. Remember Jason Booth? Patrick Mullings. He fought Spencer Oliver. Oh my gosh. Jug Ears Oliver. He fought him. Paul Ingle. Michael Brody from Manchester. Fought him. Yeah. The further down you go in his record, the more names I recognize from back in the 90s. Michael Brody. Yeah, there's the Prince Nassim fight. He fought Prince Nassim when he was 9-0. Nassim stopped him in round 4. And he fought Barry Jones himself, too, back in 93. All right, Barry Jones also fought Peter. I told you he was a UK legendary journeyman. Oh, Prince Nassim fought him a couple of times. I didn't realize that. I only remember the one fight where Prince Nassim fought. He also fought Duke McKenzie. A who's who of UK talent back in the 90s that Peter Buckley stepped in the ring with. Fought Duke McKenzie a couple of times too. This record is crazy in terms of the people that he actually fought. Obviously, mostly losses against the better guys, and he really did go in with everyone in and around his weight class on the UK circuit. 300 pro bouts. So his record was 32, as in 32 wins, 256 losses, 12 draws. 8 of his wins were by KO, right? So out of the 32 wins, 8 were by KO. Now this is particularly crazy, right? 256 losses, only 10 by KO. That's mad. So Peter Buckley was an expert in the art of survival, right? If you've had 256 losses and you only got stopped 10 times out of 256, yeah, you're very, very good at surviving. And then the 12 draws. What a mad record. Yeah, very reliable journeyman. He was an institution, Peter Buckley, you know? And Peter Buckley must have made some decent money. He must, because he used to fight so frequently. If he was smart with his money anyway, he must have made some decent money, like cumulatively, you know, because so many promoters would call him in to save the show and somebody pulled out last minute. Peter Buckley comes in. I'm pretty sure he had a day job too. I think anyway, at least at certain points of his career. But yeah, if he was smart, Triple R says, at least Steffi Bull don't need to worry about Purple Aki anymore. James Clifford says, Peter Buckley has an autobiography published. See, that might actually be an interesting read. Don Gorgon says he must have been fighting twice a week to get that record. Certainly fighting very frequently. Especially back in the 90s when there was less checks and balances as far as fighter safety. So yeah, for example, I'm looking at November 94. He fought 3 times in November 94. Twice in December. Then going on to 95, he fought twice in Feb, twice in March, twice in May. That's very, very early on in his career. Later on in his career. It's 300 pro bouts, so which part is the later on bit? He was certainly fighting every month and sometimes several times a month for multiple years. All right, peeps, I'm going to bring this stream to a close. You know the routine. Shout out to each and every one of you for joining the conversation. It's been great, especially the movie talk. And a special shout out to those who donated via Super Chat. They were Matt Borgerson, Glum Coyote, Luca, KO Talk, James Clifford, FIFA Jr., and Claridge, all right? Big respect to those who donated via Super Chat. Big up everybody else. Until next time, take care, be good. I'll catch you on the other side. I'm out.